So today I'm joined by my guest Matt Hahn. He is head of estate agent engagement at LMS. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, very well, David. Yourself?
Yeah, really nice to catch up with you again. I know we saw each other recently at the Kerfuffle conference, and there was much talk about MPTN. We love letters and acronyms in the industry. We can't get enough of them. So let's start with the first one, LMS. For those people who are not familiar with LMS, who haven't been reading the news headlines in the industry press. Give us a bit of a background as to what they're about and are they a new company and have they been around for long?
Yeah, no, great question, and I think a really relevant one because LMS have been around for 30 odd years, but I think our big change as a business came from when our CEO took over, Nick Chadbourne, in about 2018, and really digitized a great deal of what we as a business do, turned us into a sort of a fintech business, if you like the terminology. But effectively, we are a sort of a technology ecosystem traditionally sitting between conveyancers and mortgage lenders with sort of a suite of products and services that suit that market. And that was about, making the home buying and selling process faster. But as you suggest, we're newer into the estate agency sector. But that really has come about because we do have such a fantastic network, a fantastic set of clients and those we work with in the conveyancing world and the lender world. So actually, how can we build on that? How can we add more value to that process? And the estate agency world is where it begins. So
Well,
we're entering that
let's dig
MBTN.
into that a little bit more because I do some research for these things every now and again, and obviously read some of the past press that was out there. And what was surprising to me is that if you haven't heard about this, what you should know is there's some very serious people putting their minds and their effort and investment towards making the National Property Transaction Network a thing.
Yeah,
But it's also backed, and you've got backing from some major senior lenders out there. And when we're talking about, proper high street names that everybody banks with, that transact a lot of mortgages. So it's sort of, to me, it's a signal that it's got a little bit of kudos. It's coming from on high, and people really there's a concerted effort to make this work. So I think Matt, maybe what you could do is if you would give us the background. What is the MPTN and what will it mean for estate agents and why should they set up and listen right now?
yeah. Good question, and I suppose thank you for the opportunity to say MPTN is a digital ecosystem in short that facilitates the movement and sharing of data and information, digital data and information across the stakeholders. And that's the important thing. And then when you're looking at that information and when it's shared, the provenance and the veracity of that data can be seen. One of the things that we looked at is that a lot of technology that's come into play in the home buying and selling process works in quite a vertical manner. It's technology that helps estate agents particularly, but actually there is very little there that supports the technology of that movement of information across those stakeholders. And I think we rather feel when we speak to the lenders, when we speak to conveyancers, and we look at each of those stakeholders, that the next evolution of the technology in the process and how we can build on the home buying and selling process is sharing of information across the stakeholders to speed up the process, to give more transparency, and ultimately to improve the customer journey. That's what it's all about. So, yeah, MPTN is that backbone, if you like, that sits in behind everything, not interfering with all of the individual processes that those stakeholders do. We're not here to change what conveyancers do. We're not here to change what lenders do. We're here just to sit in the background and say to facilitate the movement of that information, that data that can speed things up.
Because when you think about it from an agent's point of view, there are processes that we have to handle. Simple stuff when you're onboarding, in terms of AML and then and let's not forget that if you've got professionals involved, such as solicitors, mortgage brokers, the lenders, they all have to go through the same sort of processes as well. And I think for us, it's fine. We've all accepted that we've all got a burden of compliance that we need to carry along with us and carry out. Um, and begrudgingly, we get with it and do it. But from a
Yeah.
customer's point of view, it feels very disjointed. It's almost like, well, you asked me to do the AML. My solicitor's now asking me to do the AML, and somebody else is now asking me to do it. And if you're buying a property from another agent in a chain, then you will need to go and do it all over again. And so there's a feeling that why do I need to keep doing this? Why do I need to keep jumping through those hoops? Can't I effectively have one port of call? And that's the dream, isn't it, really, that we're talking about? It's being able to share and rely on that information that the first point of call collects almost.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. There is a great deal of repetition of that information. And I think the feeling is that we've reached a level of digital maturity in the market where those sorts of things don't need to be redone. You've got schemes from HMLR, who are doing a great big push on digitization with their ID project, again, supporting. So you've got the OPDA, the Open Property Data Association, doing both a huge amount of work around it, but also sort of fact checking and doing research in the marketplace that this is wanted. So you're right. Why can't an estate agent, where their legal obligation is to do, let's take something simple like ID, why can't they do it up front, it be verified, and it drop into a platform like MPTN, but then be reused by the conveyancer, on the buyer side, done by the broker and reused by their conveyancer, equally the lender, all the way through to HMLR. So there's a lot of people that need some quite simple bits of information that does take, even if it's 2, 3, 4, 5 days to collate at each phase, each stakeholder. If it's done once at the front, you're already onto a bit of a winner. You've got a better customer journey, and you're also shaving off those few days here and there that shouldn't really need to be in play.
Well,
So
you mentioned shaving off there, and it sort of leads neatly into my next question because if you could sort of give us an idea of how MPTN, in reality, in real terms, helps to collect and share that information, but there's some interesting statistics that sit behind it in terms of what effect it might have on time to exchange and fall throughs, which is, we worry about our instruction pipeline coming through, but then we just worry about our pipeline, don't we? Because, we live and die on that sword edge of
yeah,
of cash flow, let's face it. And now more than ever with seemingly, that conveyancing cycle looking protracted compared to perhaps what we were used to, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Um, Estate agents eye that quite nervously. The longer a transaction is sort of
yeah.
sitting and floating through the pipework there, the more likely it is that something could happen that will disrupt the whole process along the way. Perhaps the buyers will find something else that they like, or just life happens in between. So momentum and speed is something that we're constantly trying to sort of conjure up. So tell us how you think that might affect it.
Yeah, first of all, when we went into the pilot, we had an idea of the elements of the process we felt MPTM would affect. We didn't know quite to what degree, but clearly the idea of the pilot is to test those,
Yeah.
to get out into the real world. Some of it's done with a little bit of sticky tape and plasters to keep it together, but actually it's to get out there and do a proper test. We were fortunate to work alongside some, a large branch network of companies to get a proper data set. Over 2,000 clients went through that side of things. But yeah, there were some, I would suggest, really exciting results because, as you say, the length of time a transaction goes on does affect that chance of it falling out. It's also certainty around that exchange and therefore the agent's fee. If you could turn over your book more often, get to exchange faster, is also more ability to make more money as well. So, yeah, off the top of my head, we reduced during the pilot. So again, pretty substantial numbers. We reduced the fallout rate of this multi-branch company by just over 40%, which when you put into monetary terms, if you look at an office by office basis, we're talking tens of thousands of pounds as a minimum by extra revenue generated, return on investment. And the speed of exchange was increased by over 30%. I think it was 35% off the top of my head. I suppose I would also say that that was the pilot. That wasn't the fully up and running, functioning MPTN. And I suspect, or we hope, that those numbers will improve when we get more and more data coming in for it. In terms of how it's used and the side from the agents, it's, again, the important thing is it does sit in the background. It shouldn't impact their day-to-day operations. So if you look at ID, material information, and then you bring into play things like the TA forms and the searches, that's all done digitally. So we don't interfere with an estate agent by way of which material information provider they're using. They're either on with us or we can onboard them. That information is done digitally by the consumer. It has to be done anyway. That's the other thing to sort of stress. It has to be done at some stage during the process. So why not front load it? We've got a lot of people who are digital natives nowadays. They're used to sitting there. You and I were talking about my parents buying and
Yeah.
selling earlier. Even my dad sits of an evening on his iPad doing bits and pieces, mostly looking at expensive cars. But he wouldn't be averse to doing all this sort of information online. So why not front load it? It simply then drops into the platform, so it can be shared on day one with the vendor's solicitor. So straight away, they've got that ID, material information, TA forms already done. Some of the material information providers are also doing pre-inquiries. I mean, again, you look at how that information upfront, front-loaded could be built on and drop straight into the vendor's solicitor for looking at day one. Then when a buyer's found, again, instead of waiting days and days for these things to get going and get underway, waiting for information, even if it's 5 days, 10 days, search is sometimes a great deal longer. Day one, they've got it. They've got a ready-made pack. So the interference with the agent is none, effectively. An integration with their CRM or via the material information provider, an integration there. And again, our platform sitting in the background is facilitating the movement of that information, so the conveyancer can go into it. They can see where is the information come from and how trustworthy is that source.
And I suppose the simplicity of transparency uh, on all of these processes
Yeah,
actually helps give people a definable set of goals and perhaps milestones that they're working to. So it literally, I suppose, by illuminating all of this, it leaves nowhere for anybody to hide. So we know there are dark points in every transaction where somebody's
yeah,
meant to do something, but they've put it to one side for the moment and it'll wait till later. We've all done it. And that could be agent, that could be solicitor, it could be anybody
yeah,
involved. Can even be very often the clients themselves who say, you know what? I'll fill that in later. My solicitors asked me for some information. I'll
yeah.
get that to them tomorrow when I'm not working or whatever that may be. But just having it sort of clearly out in the open so that people can see who the ball is with at that moment in
Yeah.
time, I think gives people a goal that they can work towards.
Well, so 2 points on that. First of all, if you think about it from the buyer's point of view, if you're a buyer and you're told this seller is digital sale ready, I think it gives the seller has gone through a level of commitment to get all that information and very likely pay for it. 50 to 100 quid, but also the motivation to that buyer. If they're umming and ahhing between two properties, we're not suggesting it's going to change a decision by a buyer, by the way. That's not what I'm suggesting, but actually a level of confidence from that buyer that they're a serious seller. And again, there's transparency. I want to know all of this X, Y, and Z. Well, the seller's already done it, got it, and you could in effect see it. Number one, and then number two, you're right. When you look at all these different stakeholders in and when the information is garnered, if it's done right up front, it does ultimately benefit all of those stakeholders for the consumer. If a lender, the ultimate goal, if a lender, instead of getting reported on by the conveyancer down the line, can see all that information at the very beginning, they can make a decision on that prospective buyer right at the very beginning. That doesn't have to be an element that falls out. So again, it benefits the seller, benefits the buyer.
Takes the guesswork away as well, doesn't it, really, as well?
It does, and I think with so much information being digital nowadays, it doesn't need to be guesswork.
Yeah.
You front load that data. Why can't it be seen at the beginning of the process? Have a really committed, motivated seller. Transparency for the buyer. Everybody goes into the transaction, know what they're doing. A faster transaction gives greater certainty, so everybody again benefits. Ultimately, makes a bit more money out of it. But but the buyer and the seller get greater certainty by it happening faster. So it's with them in mind. But actually, the interesting thing with this backbone of sharing data is everybody does benefit. The agents get greater certainty, greater confidence on their fees and speed of turnover. Conveyancers, again, likewise, they get more information up front, can provide a better service to their clients. And then lenders, obviously, in theory, will have equally a better conversion rate because they also don't lose out on those fallouts down the line.
So now we know what it does, and who it's there to help, and it's pretty much everybody that's involved in the transaction. And I suppose what I love about this, and I always go on about this with prop tech, there's good prop tech and there's bad prop tech. And good prop tech to me is hasn't just got a solution to a problem that an agent's got, but it ultimately benefits the consumer, i.e.
Yeah,
the man on the street, the woman on the street that is buying their house, renting it, whatever their experience may be as the end customer.
yeah.
So I think this kind of it ticks all of those boxes, which is lovely. So you're okay with me. But going forward, and I know it'll be hard to sort of explain this perhaps, but in terms of the actual user experience, could you give us a little summary of what the agent experience is in terms of, dashboards or logins or things that they'll be seeing, and how does the consumer experience, how does the customer actually see that as well?
So as things stand at the moment, I think it's probably important to point out that we're not consumer facing. If you, I do like this analogy, and my boss sort of chuckles at me for it. But if you think about broadband, you've got OpenReach as the facilitator of moving all that
Yeah,
information around, but they're not customer facing.
right.
O2, EE, Sky plug in and are the customer facing element of that. So we are not looking to interfere with agents in terms of their customer relationship and that
So
side of
you
it.
sit in the background.
Yeah, in the
You're the
background.
Wizard of Oz.
With a that's a new one. I might write that down, David. With Wizard of Oz. So yeah, we don't interfere with the. I say interfere. We don't have touch points with the customer as things stand.
Yeah.
That touch point is for the agent and for the agent to lead with, for example, their material information provider, that digital element at the front. So that's not for us. So if you take ID and material information, again, really through an API or our UI if it's particularly needed, although again, plugging into the agent's CRM or the material information provider, there's not actually a touch point from the agent with that side of things. They can log on to our UI and they can have a look at it and see the players and see the information that's sitting in there, but it is sitting in the background. So right from the very beginning, it doesn't interfere. It isn't now the login for an agent. It is that flow of information, as a simple example for the agent, from the material information provider into the platform across to the conveyancer. The
Okay.
conveyancer's journey is very similar for simplicity, either an API into their CMS or their login, because historically we have this phenomenal network of conveyancers, 4,500 of them. They already have logins to our UI. We're building the APIs with them to help this information, and MPTN is a new product, but actually they can already, in theory, consume all of the data, can upload the data, can look at it on day one simply by logging into the UI, 4,500 of them that they already utilize through us.
Perfect. Okay. So that's really interesting. And in terms of that's where you've got to so far and what you're doing. Give us an idea of what the roadmap ahead might look like. And so for agents that are watching this and thinking, well, this actually is what we've been waiting for to hopefully make our lives a lot easier. How could they perhaps get involved and perhaps even influence it? Are you looking at the moment for more agent opinion and for people to sort of pay, effectively play into this and perhaps even test it?
So there are two parts to that answer briefly, and I'll try and be brief. One is that the future roadmap is that we want to build the journey for each of the stakeholders. So what you and I are talking about now and influencing is the estate agency side of it. But actually, you've got a mortgage broker journey with a buyer, and we are looking at parts of that in terms of expediting it, how that mortgage broker moves information on the buyer early on into their conveyancer and into the lender, and equally the lender journey. And that's where this whole platform thinking as the sort of the next iteration of technology, sort of across the spectrum of the stakeholders, is important. That it gives us building the broker journey and the lender journey and the lender's access to really, really early information so they can make earlier decisions, again, benefits the buyers. So what we're talking about is the estate agency journey, but there's some really exciting bits on the roadmap by way of broker journey, mortgage broker, and lender element, as was announced in the press recently with some of the very, very
Yeah.
biggest lenders in the country. We've got them on board. Now, the second part of the things that in terms of how can agents get involved and influence, one of the things as a business we already do is we have roundtables with our conveyancers and with our lenders. We want input from our stakeholders, from our clients, in terms of what products and services that we provide work, how can they be improved,
Yeah.
what doesn't seem to work. So although we're not there yet, we will be looking at agents to join us on these roundtables to have an influence. Come and sit with us, come and sit down and tell us what's working and what isn't. So yeah, we've already got that in play for conveyancers and lenders, and we do quite a bit of it, get a lot of feedback, a lot of engagement for some brilliantly proactive conveyancers, for example. And I'm really hoping that we can get a really diverse bunch of agents, one office companies right the way up to the bigger corporates, that will be able to sit in a room, 8 to 10 of us, and give us feedback and talk to us about it so we can build a product that works for the agents.
So we've discussed, I think, the pilot, obviously, and the fact that it's got some very real world application and it's been road tested already. And we always ask you for some standout statistics, and we've touched on these already. But I've got some of them here in front of me. The third one, and I'll just briefly run through them. The third one to me as an agent is always what makes my ears prick up, if you like. But good news for everybody because in the pilot, I think you saw a 35% reduction in time from sold subject to contract to exchange, which is
Yeah,
remarkable.
yeah,
43% fewer fall throughs, which
yeah,
is beyond remarkable. It's really significant. And then this is the one that got me. 21% higher agent instruction rates with firms involved in the pilot. We're always, as agents, we're obsessed with instruction rates. How do we win them? How do we convert them? How can we keep them moving? So just concentrating on that third one for the moment. Is that due to removing friction, Matt? Is that because the agent that you chose is superb anyway and has got great processes? Is it, what do you put that down to?
Well, I think when we did the pilot, that was around and it took some time, and we go in and I don't want to say train, that's the wrong word, because agents do a great job and we're not here to train, but sort of suggest how things
Yeah,
can be used and how MPTN can be used. But in time, the agents began to use MPTN in conjunction with an MI provider as a sales tool. The compliance element, the consumer's not interested in. They do it, and an agent asks for it because it has to. But actually, if you go out and you sell that digital journey to sellers and talk to them that your agency are utilizing a digital journey, there is in using that journey, it reduces the time to exchange,
yeah,
and in turn, there reduces the fallout rate. So, the agents were really using it as a sales tool and to stand out from the competition as having this digital journey, this digital first estate agency, which consumers really begun to
yeah,
buy into and understand. So it was around using our product in conjunction with an MI provider as a sales tool, not
yeah.
compliance.
No,
And I think.
yeah, and as you know, I mean, we did that panel at the conference, which sort of highlighted just one of those journeys, if you like.
Mm,
And I do really passionately believe, as an agent, that the way that we say hello to our clients, i.e., the way that we onboard them,
mm,
says everything about us and stands us in better stead to keep that instruction for longer. Because not every transaction goes, I'd like to sell, I'm sold. So we know that we might be in for the long haul with them.
yep,
But also I think the smoother we can make that process and the more professional, and I'm going to use the word slick, but
yep.
that often with estate agents has the wrong connotations. But what I mean by that is it is frictionless. It's a modern digital process, just like you would sign up for any other service.
Well,
here's a state agency.
and that's the critical bit. And I think you've just really hit the nail on the head. I think our expectations as consumers are changing, have changed. I'm not comparing it to, but you look at Amazon, I say I'm absolutely not comparing it. That would be ridiculous. But, we expect to be able to go on our phone, order something, it arrives the next day. So why shouldn't a consumer expect a slick service to begin with? I mentioned them earlier, but I suppose to back up some of our pilot stats in terms of our conversation today is the OPDA did some research, I think 5,500 buyers and sellers, and they found, I'll have to read the report, but it was about 82% of those that did the survey supported the idea of a digital property pack to begin with, a digital journey, and 76% of those, so a slight drop off, said they would be willing to do the digital journey and share that data across the stakeholders. So that's it. I think people are more savvy. There are far more digitally native people out there, and they're quite happy actually to sit on
Yeah.
a mobile and
No,
do that
I
journey.
I agree, and I think it's probably a fair comment that amongst the digital natives, we had a little chat off camera beforehand, so we were dealing with perhaps if we refer to them unkindly as the boomer generation, but that generation of people who maybe haven't sold a house for 40 years, so they don't know what they're doing. But at the other end of the scale, where you've got people who are very digitally astute, who've kind of been brought up with the mobile phone in their hand.
Yeah,
And they know what they're doing. My kids' generation, for instance, when they come to an estate agent and they are buying a property or they're selling a property, I often wonder whether, and I know this because actually I'm privileged enough to get that feedback from them direct. Very often they'll turn up and go, why aren't you guys sharing information? Like
yeah.
in their head, a digital process is something that's kind of really easily shared between people and all the stakeholders. So I suppose we're playing catch up on their expectations a little bit, aren't we?
We're playing catch up on their expectations, number one, but I also think we're playing catch up on other parts of the world that have already done it. Actually, the States is about 53 days as an average from instruction to exchange. There are a number of parts of the Middle East that are doing it in a matter of weeks. And I know we have a more complicated land registry system. I
Yeah,
know there are quirks to what we're doing that add a layer of complexities. Absolutely. So I'm not directly comparing, but they have moved a great deal of what they do to being digitized already, and it's had big impacts on those countries. So in this country, as you say, we've got the younger generation that's all they're used to, and we've got a greater expectation from consumers to be able to do a digital journey and don't even question it. They almost expect it. And then we've got proof around the world that it can be done. So yeah, I think we as a business with our network of the conveyancer and the lender are just enormously excited about it. And I think there is this move for the next level of technology. What is it next? And there has been some brilliant prop techs, some brilliant solutions, but it has tended to be for the individual stakeholders.
yeah.
So this interoperability between platforms, this interoperability between stakeholders, we feel is the next big thing. And as hopefully we've already proven with the pilot, for those consumers, for the customer, it can speed things up, reduce fall throughs, and have a really material impact, and exciting material impact.
Do you know what? You use the word exciting. It is genuinely exciting because I think this sort of heralds that new era of more connectedness. We
Connectivity.
are,
Yeah.
enough of sort of pointing that finger of blame as to where the delays are and so on. What we're doing is we're putting everything on the table and we're saying, look, this is how we work together. This is how we can do it transparently.
Yeah.
And this is how we can do it with the maximum benefit derived to all the stakeholders and also are the members of the public who are benefiting from this. I think it's genuinely very exciting to see where you guys are going. Thank you very much for giving us that snapshot into what LMS are doing, but also, more importantly, what the MPTN is going to mean for agents in the future. And wish you the best of luck with it. We will no doubt check in again and see where it gets to. But Matt, thank you very much for your time.
No, absolute pleasure. Been lovely chatting, David. Thanks so much.